Hello guys, we are back again. This is Miss Imat, and for today's video we will be focusing on the fifth and the last part of lesson 5.1, identify functions. And this part will be about identifying functions using graphs, right? So we did identifying functions using mapping diagrams, using tables, and this is the last one about using graphs. Before we start, let's have a quick revision about the last part of the lesson, which is about determining if the given table is a function or not. So again, based on definition of functions, the x values should be all different for it to be a, so this one, x should not be repeated. That is for functions. So if the x values are repeated, then it is not a function. Let's start. Let's look at the first table. In the first table, the x values are the following: 0, -5, 1, and 3. Now you can see that all the numbers are different. So this is a function because all the numbers in the x values are different. That is a function. Let's focus now on the second table. These are your x values. We have 1, 2, 1, and 2. Now, number 1 and 2 is repeated. See, there's 1 here and again 1. And then you have 2 and another 2. Now, this means that the x values are repeated. And this table is not a function. Now we can move on to the main part of this video, which is about identify functions using graphs. So to determine whether the relation shown on a graph is a function, you can apply the vertical line test. So what is the vertical line test? So vertical lines look like this. Okay, so it's a line that is standing up. So it said that we have to apply that line in this graph for us to determine if this is a function or not. So how do we do that? Easy. I have to put a lot of vertical lines in any part of the graph. So I will put here, I can put here. Okay, you can write as many vertical lines as possible, but the more it is, the better. Now, let's look at these lines. So the first vertical line that I put is touching the line, the graph, in one point. The second one is touching it at 1.1. If I continue to do that, I can see that the vertical lines that I put, they are all touching the graph. This is my graph, the blue line. It's all touching the graph at exactly 1 point each. If they're only touching the line and at 1 point, then it means that this one is a function. Again, the vertical lines should only touch the graph at 1 point, all of them, at only 1 point. If it touches the graph and more than 1 point, let's say 2 points, 3 points, then it is not a function. Let's have the second example. Okay, this. Let's apply the vertical line test to know if this graph is a function or not. So I will put a lot of vertical lines in this graph. I will even put one here. Okay. By the way, guys, the vertical line should be straight. Okay, so if you're doing it on your own, it's better that you have a ruler with you. The only reason why my lines are not straight is because I'm trying to use my mouse to draw it. Okay, but if you have it, you have the ruler, you have to use that. It has to be straight down. Okay, now going back, I can mark the points that my vertical lines are touching the graph. This line, this vertical line is touching the graph at one point. My graph is the blue line. Okay. Now the second vertical line is touching the graph at 2 points. The next is touching it in 2 points, 2, also 2. So the rest are touching it at 2 points. Now, again, I've mentioned in the previous example, it is a function if all the vertical lines are touching the graph at only 1 point. But in this example, some of the vertical lines are touching the graph at 2 points. So this means that this graph is not a function. So this one is not a function. Let's have the next example. So we have this graph. Let's apply the vertical line test. I'm gonna put several vertical lines here. You can put it at all parts of the graph. Now, if I mark the parts that touches the graph, I have here 1, 1, 1 also, and lastly 1. Okay, so now all my vertical lines are touching the graph at only 1 point each. So this means that this graph is a function. This is a function. Let's go to our next example. What if you have a graph that looks like this? It is not, we have only random points. Okay, so the same thing you have to do, draw vertical lines along the points, along the graphs. So if I do that along the points, I will have this vertical line. And my vertical lines would touch the point, this one at 1 point, 1 point. This one will touch at 2 points, and this one will touch at 1 point. Now, since one of the vertical lines are touching the graph at 2 points, this is not a function. So it's not a function. So last but not the least, let's have the final example. So we have this graph. Again, you have to put the vertical line test along the points that we have. So if I put vertical lines along the points, I will have something like this. Now let's see at how many points does it touch the graph. So we have 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. So since all the vertical lines are touching the points only at only one time each, then this is a function. And that's it, guys, for this part of the lesson. Now I hope you have your copybooks with you because we will now be doing the crossword. So I have here 2 graphs. You have to copy and answer the following in your copybook, and you have to determine if each given graph is a function or not a function. Make sure to do this in your copybook. Again, this is Miss Imat, your teacher guide for today. Till the next video, happy learning!